Hello, welcome to Stargazer Creations. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Jasmine and today I'm going to show you how I make these cute faux leather bows. I first started making these bows about 3 years ago in 2020, and the reason was originally I wanted to make those big ribbon bows that other sellers have, but I was having a hard time trying to get my designs to actually look good on the ribbon. Then I saw paper bows and I thought, what if I made them out of leather instead, so that they're durable and stiff enough to be painted on. These bows are actually pretty simple to make. The first thing you need is the faux leather, which is better sold by the yard. Originally I was purchasing the leather on Etsy from a seller, but I had a problem with consistency. When I first started, I had ordered 1 yard of each color. But one day I ran out of red, and when I ordered more, the shipment that I received was a much brighter shade of red, and so I couldn't use it for some of my designs because it didn't match the original design. Then my mom found a vendor that I switched to, and luckily they had both shades of red. The bows consist of a total of 4 pieces. This back piece, the center bow, the top bow, and this strip that holds it all together. There are 3 methods to cutting the pieces. The first one is what I originally did when I first started, which is to use a paper stencil. I purchased a bow template from an Etsy seller and printed it on thick cardstock, then cut the shapes. And then using those stencils, I traced the shapes across the back of the leather and then cut them out with scissors. This is a method to use if you can't afford equipment to speed things up and make things easier. If you're doing this, I do recommend using a felt tip pen, because if you use a ballpoint pen or marker, even though the marks are on the back of the material, the ink still bleeds through the edges, and so you end up with these ink marks all across any lighter colors. And with the felt tip pen, I've never had this issue. The second method is to use a leather press. A leather press is this heavy-duty press that's used to punch out the shapes. It uses leather cutters. It's these big wood blocks with the actual shape as a kind of blade, which you can find from online sellers or order custom-made ones like I did. What you do is you first cut the leather into rectangular strips big enough to go over the cutter, and then you place the sheet on top of the cutter in the press and then punch the shape out. I would say this method is much faster than tracing, because drawing straight lines goes a lot faster than tracing the stencil over and over again. It also leads to more consistent pieces, since you don't have to rely on hoping that you cut everything perfectly with your hands. Unfortunately, the issue I did run into was that I couldn't get it to cut evenly every time, to cut the piece cleanly, I mean, because the actual pieces, the cutters weren't flat, so when I would punch the shape out, usually it'd push on one side, but the other side wouldn't get cut. So the only way to get it to mostly cut was, for the bigger pieces, I would punch the shape and then slide the piece forward and punch again. But sometimes the leather would stick to the top or shift, and so I'd end up with a ruined piece. So most of the time I just used scissors to cut whatever didn't cut with the press. Another thing to note is that with this method, because you're not using every inch of available space, you do end up getting less bows out of that yard of leather, but I wouldn't say it's enough to really make an issue or to really affect the price of the bow. The third method is what I currently use, and that's to use a cutting machine. I have a Cricut Explore Air 2. For this, I took my stencil and converted it into an SVG file, which is compatible with the Cricut design space. And what I love about this is that I'm able to create custom shapes depending on the bow I'm making. For example, For the Mickey bow, which I'm going to be showing, I made the back piece into Mickey ears instead, so it was rounded rather than use the original shape. For the Cricut, I usually see how much can get cut on one 12 by 24 inch mat, and then I cut the leather into the correct size sheets. I then place the material face up on a strong grip mat. Two things are very important here. The first is that you have to use a strong grip mat, otherwise the material will slide. The second thing is to make sure you place the fabric side of the leather directly on the mat. Unfortunately, it will make your mat wear out faster because the strings and the lint start to kind of stick to the mat. But if you put the leather side down, the glue of the mat gets stuck to the leather and it comes off, pretty much ruining your mat, along with leading to extra work cleaning the glue from the leather. Now, I cut my leather on the bonded fabric setting on regular depth, and it cuts almost perfectly with only a few strings left attached to that I have to go with scissors just to release. Once you have your pieces, this is the time to paint or decorate them. There are two options for this. The first is to use leather paint. I use Angelus brand, which is very permanent and very easy to apply. The other method is to use heat transfer vinyl. I love using heat transfer vinyl for more symmetrical shapes, as well as colors that take multiple coats to apply, just so that everything looks so much more clean and perfect. I'm showing a total of 3 bows in this video, 2 Coco themed bows and a Sorcerer Mickey bow. For Sorcerer Mickey, I used to use silver paint, but the painted parts are stars and a moon, and so I switched to heat transfer vinyl for cleaner opaque shapes. I used Cricut brand silver heat transfer vinyl, and using my mini Cricut iron with a piece of parchment paper on top for extra protection, I pressed my little iron for only 5 seconds. With small vinyl pieces, it's important not to heat them for too long, or else the vinyl will melt and stick to the plastic rather than material. For the Coco bows, I also used heat transfer vinyl. These were a little time consuming because there were so many small pieces, and I had to be careful when I was weeding them out to make sure none of it got stuck. Once you have your pieces finished, decorated, the last thing is to glue them together. Originally, I was using contact cement to glue the pieces, but although the glue was strong, for example, this is actually a bow that I used the contact cement with back in 2020, and it is together very well, but if I pull this piece up, it would come apart really easily. I mean, technically that would apply to any glue because leather's so flexible and thick, and it's not going to completely absorb the glue. But the main reason I switched glues is because contact cement dried way too quickly, so if I didn't move fast enough, it would come apart almost immediately. So I did some research and found that E6000 is recommended for leather, and that worked great. So first you're going to apply the glue to all 3 points and then close the bow and use an alligator clip to keep it together until it dries. Once those pieces are dry, use the glue again to glue them together. Finally, it's time for the center strip. I can usually get these pieces using scraps from the cut pieces. I cut long strips and then just trim them as I'm going. So to glue the center of the bow, you're going to place 1 dot in the center, line the bow, wrapping it around, and then you're going to apply the glue at the end of the strip, wrap it around completely, and then hold it until it's dry. Once it's dry enough, then you can slide the alligator clip on and push down, making sure it's all holding together. And that's how you make a leather bow. I sell these bows for $6 each on my Etsy. I sell character themed bows on Stargazer Artistry and any other designs on my store, Stargazer Lily Boutique. If you found this tutorial helpful, please hit the like button. If you're interested in seeing more tutorials, please subscribe. Have a craft project you're curious about? Then comment down below and I'll give it a shot. Thank you so much for watching.